If you grew up anywhere along the Texas-Mexico border, you know the sound before you know the name. A scream. Not an owl's screech, a woman's scream, cutting through the dark somewhere out past the tree line. Grandmothers pull children inside. Doors get bolted. Someone crosses themselves and says 2 words under their breath. La Lechuza, the owl witch. A creature said to stand as tall as a man, with the body of a massive owl and the face of an old woman twisted in rage. She doesn't just haunt these towns, she hunts them. And for over a century, people swear she's still out there, waiting in the mesquite brush for the next person foolish enough to walk home alone. Tonight we're going into the legend of La Lechuza, where she came from, why she hunts, and why so many people along the border still refuse to say her name after dark. The legend of La Lechuza stretches across South Texas and northern Mexico, passed down through generations in small towns, from the Rio Grande Valley up through the brush country. Its roots reach back to older Mesoamerican traditions, where owls were already seen as omens of death and messengers between the living and the dead. But the version people whisper about today is more specific, more personal, and far more disturbing. The most common origin story goes like this. A woman in a small town, sometimes a healer, sometimes simply an outcast, is accused of witchcraft. Depending on who's telling it, she's murdered by a mob, or she dies alone after being shunned by everyone she once knew. Either way, she doesn't stay dead. She returns transformed, her body twisted into something both human and bird, cursed or empowered, to take revenge on the community that wronged her. In some tellings, La Lechuza isn't random in her fury. She's said to hunt those who've done real harm, drunks, abusers, unfaithful spouses, men who beat their wives or neglect their children. Curanderas, the traditional folk healers of the region, have long described her as a kind of dark justice, a reminder that cruelty doesn't go unanswered, even if the law looks the other way. But there's a second reputation that makes her far more dangerous to ordinary people: her hunger for children. Witnesses across generations describe hearing the unmistakable cry of a baby coming from somewhere in the dark, only for the sound to shift into something else entirely once you get close. A trap, a lure. And by then, it's often too late. Stories of La Lechuza sightings run thick through South Texas, from small ranching towns to the outskirts of larger cities near the border. The details shift from telling to telling, but certain elements repeat with unsettling consistency. Drivers on lonely stretches of farm road describe a shape gliding low alongside their vehicle, keeping pace no matter how fast they go, then vanishing the instant they slow down. Others describe a scream that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, so loud it rattles windows, followed by dead silence. One of the most repeated accounts involves a giant owl perched motionless on a rooftop or fence post, watching a house for hours. Families who've reported this often say it happened not long before a death or serious misfortune struck someone inside, which is part of why, in much of the region, an owl landing near your home is still taken as a warning, not a coincidence. Then there are the closer encounters, people who say they came face to face with her directly. Descriptions vary, but a pattern holds. Enormous wings, a face too human to belong to any bird, and eyes that seem to recognize you. Several accounts describe throwing rocks or salt toward the creature, an old defensive practice still passed down by grandparents who insist it's the only thing that will make her retreat. Skeptics point to a much simpler explanation for a lot of this: the barn owl. Its call is genuinely unsettling, a raspy, guttural screech that can sound almost human in the right conditions, especially at night, especially to someone already afraid. Barn owls are also large, pale, and silent in flight, capable of appearing and disappearing in a way that feels supernatural if you don't know what you're looking at. For a lot of researchers, that's the seed the entire legend grew from. But that explanation has never been enough to stop people from bolting their doors when they hear that scream. What keeps La Lechuza alive isn't just fear, it's function. In communities where formal law enforcement felt distant or unreliable, a legend like hers did real work. She was a warning built into the culture itself. Mistreat your family, harm the vulnerable, and something older than the sheriff might come looking for you. That's part of why the legend hasn't faded the way so many small-town ghost stories eventually do. Parents still use her to keep children close after dark. Older generations still treat an owl's presence near the house as something to take seriously. And in towns up and down the border, people will still tell you, without a hint of a joke, that they've heard her scream. Whether you see La Lechuza as a folk memory of old fears, a lingering piece of Mesoamerican belief, or something that's still out there tonight in the brush country, the legend endures for a reason. Some stories get told because they're entertaining. Others get told because somewhere deep down, people aren't entirely sure they're wrong to be afraid. So if you're ever driving a back road near the border after dark and you hear a woman scream where no woman should be, don't stop the car. Don't roll down the window. Just keep driving.